Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. Tonight what I want to talk about is traveling. Traveling is really important in this tradition and a lot of other traditions. The idea of the act of traveling, having the bhava, the orientation of a traveler, and actually setting out on travels of some sort or another. When I was in graduate school, there was a Swiss woman who was at the same graduate school I was at for a year on some sort of fellowship. And she was really fun-loving and liked to do, was adventurous and seemed pretty relaxed and able to try new things without too much anxiety. And we became good friends. Then she invited me to come visit her in Switzerland in her home in Basel. And it was about a year later that I went, and it was like meeting a different person. She was really uptight. She was anxious about following rules, and she was living in a wealthy co-op, a building where people owned their own apartments, and it was quite wealthy. And like a lot of those kinds of places, they had a rule book this thick for the people that owned condos. And one day, she was practicing her saxophone during some prescribed hours when you were allowed to practice with your musical instruments. That was one of the rules in this giant book. And one of her neighbors complained. And my friend absolutely had a hysterical meltdown because someone didn't follow the rules, because she was following the rules and someone complained about her, and that was just made her blow her fuses. I mean, lying on the bed just weeping inconsolably about this. Very concerned about what other people thought of her, about how she appeared to other people, and etc. So it was really an interesting experience to meet someone when they were traveling and then go meet them when they were in their native environment. I think that a lot of us have had that experience of traveling somewhere, being on the road, and what happens? You talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. You're willing to have adventures that are a little bit outside of your comfort zone, things that you maybe wouldn't try at home. Many, many people have, intense, brief love affairs while they're traveling because they are a little more relaxed. Many of us could have that experience at some point in our lives. Maybe we even get into trouble while we're traveling.
Intense, brief love.
Yeah, exactly. What do we feel when we're traveling? And that's our experience. Of course, there are other people who are just, carrying everything with them and trying to reconstruct a mini pod of their life back home, and like sort of a tortoise with a shell, going around traveling with everything with them. Okay, we're not talking about that kind of person. We're talking about, someone who travels and has the experience, at least sometimes, of not being so concerned with what other people think of you, not having your identity formation that you've accrued over years and years at home, have that be a little bit less oppressive, right? Being a little more self-expressive, a little more adventurous, being willing to explore new people, and also just having the experience of being more interested in things than you are at home, right? Seeing things with a fresh eye. It's not just that things are new, it's that you go with the intention of having an experience of the new. And so it's kind of it is a new environment, but you're also meeting it with a fresh attitude. Right? You're wanting to have some kind of different experience a lot of the time. So a lot of the things that I just said are attitudes that we want to bring to our spiritual practice. We want to maintain a sense of adventure and freshness. We want to be curious about what we're experiencing and about our world and about other people. We want to let go of the burden, and I would even say the prison, of the identity construct that we've cobbled together over God knows how long. Right? That's really becomes very, very suffocating. We want to not care so much what other people think of us and just be ourselves. We want to be more expressive in our lives, just more spontaneous. So all of these qualities of travel are part of the reason why traveling is really central to the tradition in many different ways. So for instance, it's said that it's very good to have a lot of dreams about traveling. I didn't know this until, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago I came across this, and I was trying to find it today, but I didn't know where I found it. But all my life I've continually dreamt of traveling. I mean, it's my number one most repetitive dream. Not the sannyasin is considered to be a traveler, a person who is on the path as either an inner or an outer renunciate. And in some of the very traditional sannyasin lineages in India, you must keep traveling. You are not allowed to stay anywhere more than 3 nights for your entire life once you take vows. And the only reason you can stay somewhere longer than that is if you're requested to give teachings. Otherwise, you have to keep moving.
You couldn't even stay with a teacher?
No, that's over. Yeah. Yeah. This is just some traditions, right? Not all of them. In most traditions, when someone is a serious practitioner, they are told by their teacher to go traveling for some period of time. And that's a very ancient practice, that you walk out of your house with only the clothes on your back, with no money, no plans of where to go, nowhere to stay, and you just sort of throw yourself into the arms of the world. And if you eat, you eat. If you don't eat, you don't eat. If you have a place to sleep, you do. If you don't, you don't. And you experience life with that total nakedness. Yeah. So this is something that, is a big part of practice for a certain segment of sadhakas and sadhikas in India. There's currently a Buddhist monk whose name escapes me, but he's pretty well known, who just started doing this. It's kind of interesting what's happened around it, because we live in such a strange voyeuristic culture, right? So and I think he's done this with absolute sincerity, but it keeps getting documented and put on Facebook and stuff, so it's like a little bit weird. Ma once told one of her students to do this, and she said, I want you to, for a year, I don't want you to see anyone you know or have contact with anybody that you know. And just leave with no money, just go for a year. And he did that, and then at one point during the year, it just so happened that Ma and her entourage were coming through the town where he was. And he glimpsed her, and then he, ran away as fast as he could so that they wouldn't see each other. But later on, Ma revealed that she knew he was there.
She gave him a little peek.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So when we have this attitude of a traveler in our everyday lives, it can be very, very helpful. In many of the tantras it says there's no need to go on a pilgrimage. There's no actual need to travel physically unless that's the only way you can do it, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that you can do traveling, you can do not traveling. You can travel in place by bringing that fresh attitude to everything, by being more adventurous, by dropping the requirement that other people approve of you, by working to release your attachments to specific people, by widening your range of relationships that you're willing to have. And I wouldn't say like encounters. Many of us avoid encounters with strange people we consider to be strange or unpleasant or a little off or just, bothersome or simply not, we have better things to do. We're racing around in our lives, and lots of times people want to interact with us and we ignore them or brush them off or defend ourselves against them or in some way or another. Well, when you're traveling, you don't do that so much. You're being more present in the moment, and you're exploring what is actually arising in the moment. You're not thinking, half an hour from now, something else is going to happen, so I have to ignore what's happening right now in order to get to my thing that's going to happen in half an hour. Right? You don't do that when you're traveling. You're being much more present with the moment and much more exploratory and playful in the moment. Okay? So these are all qualities of the traveler that we can bring into our lives right now. It's good to remember experiences that you've had when you've traveled. Right? And to think about, for each of you, to think about individually, what qualities do you express when you're traveling, or maybe at times when you were traveling, that relate to the process of waking up, and how could you bring those qualities into your life now? Right here and now, without waiting for the next big trip. The other thing that you can do is you could do it one day a week, you could do it one day a month, is to just leave your house with no plan. What would it be like to just walk out your front door and have no plan? You're not going anywhere. What would you do? That's kind of a very mini version of leaving your teacher's ashram or leaving your hermitage or leaving your house as a practitioner to go you don't know where for a year, right, or more. Mm-hmm. One thing I did when I was when I had left academia, so I used to be a professor, some of you may or may not know that, and I realized that I didn't want to do that anymore. So I quit my job, and I had been living in Chicago teaching at a university there, and I came back to California. And I just decided to not look for work and see what happened. I just decided to kind of wait and see what came my way and not be aggressive towards life. And even before I got to California, somebody who had heard that I had quit my job, who I used to work for doing nonprofit consulting, already emailed me and said, "We want you to do some work." And then when I got here, from that time onward, that was 2004. From that time onward until I got to Portland, Oregon in 2007, I never tried to get any work. I never did anything. And everything was completely fine. Why was everything completely fine? Because I was doing so much spiritual practice, and because I had this intention and the world was responding. Right? I didn't get too much work. I didn't get too little work. I got just the right amount. Right? So there are all kinds of little experiments we might be able to cook up to play with this if we're doing practice and we have a serious intention to be more present in our lives, and I would say even further, play with the presence of the present. You know, the present and presence are very, very different. The present is just some aspect of linear time. It's not really that important. But the presence of the presence, the actual living quality of the present, that's what we really want to pay attention to. Right? How are we being, what's happening here, you know? If our minds are always on what's going to happen a half an hour from now, or a week from now, or a day from now, or sometimes our minds are really focused on what happened in the past and what we didn't get and how we screwed up and what we wish we'd done. You know, some of us are more future-oriented and some of us are more past-oriented. And some of us are very, very focused on accomplishments, you know, what we can accomplish. And all of that takes us out of the presence of the present. And then we have nothing to play with other than our own karmas. Yeah. When we play with the presence of the present, then we're actually able to begin stepping out of our karma. When we're being responsive to the presence of the present. And we're not discounting things. We're actually, willing to experiment, being spontaneous and letting the presence of the present direct us, letting it tell us what to do in that moment or what to do next. And it just becomes a very dance-like form of existence. Somebody, just to give you an example of how we don't do that, somebody wrote to me on Facebook, someone who had been to some satsangs out in Oregon, and she lives in New York City, and she used to own a yoga studio, but I don't think she does anymore. Anyway, she wanted to know if I had any interest in coming to New York City to teach, and she would help to arrange it. And she kept using phrases like, I'll help you to break into the New York scene, but it's really hard to break into that scene, and it's hard to navigate the New York scene. And she was already imagining that the only reason I would go teach in New York would be if I had some grand master plan and that I was going to somehow conquer the scene in New York. I mean, just the thought of it is utterly exhausting, first of all. So I just wrote to her today. I said, it's okay. I said, if you want me to come teach, I'll come teach. And then whatever happens, happens. I don't have any interest in, having a plan to get bigger or grow or conquer anything or navigate a scene or... You wrote to me, you said you wanted me to come teach and you'd organize it. Let's just keep it simple. So we all have this attitude, we all have a much more aggressive attitude toward life than we really should, if we want to be playing with the presence of the present. And when we're traveling, our attitude is a little less aggressive. In general, obviously there's people that are just as aggressive on the road as they are at home. The people who overplan everything and they know exactly where they're going to stay at every single place, exactly what sites they're going to see. They've got them, some sort of Evernote notebook. Yeah, with photographs of all the places they're going to see. They've already watched videos of everything and watched PBS and BBC specials about everything. And by the time they get there, it just looks exactly like it did on PBS, and it's all rather boring. I have a habit of going places without guidebooks. I haven't done that on the yatras because we need to know where we're going, but when I'm traveling on my own, I do have that habit. And one time I went to Hungary without a guidebook. Without having even read a guidebook. And I was staying with a friend, but there was all kinds of complications. And at one point I thought, well, I'm going to have to go stay somewhere else. But I didn't even know where I was, really. It was pretty funny. And I thought, next time I think I'll just bring a little guidebook. Yeah, a map. Probably a map would have been nice. But really, there are no maps that can work as well for you as actually being responsive to presence, to the living intelligence of every moment. That's the best map you can possibly have. And just relaxing and trying to feel your way through life rather than plan and think your way through life. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.